I'm Emma Rodriguez, 29, and I built my digital marketing empire from nothing while my family runs Rodriguez Media Group, one of the most prestigious advertising agencies in Chicago. Last Tuesday, I arrived at our family's glass tower headquarters for the quarterly board meeting, excited to share my company's breakthrough. We'd just landed 3 Fortune 500 clients in 1 month. Instead of being escorted to the executive boardroom, my mother quietly directed me to wait in the staff break room. As I sat there, watching senior executives file past toward the real meeting, my phone buzzed with a call from my assistant Sarah that would change everything. The Rodriguez name carries serious weight in Chicago's advertising world. My father, Miguel Rodriguez, started with a small bilingual marketing firm in his 20s, targeting the growing Hispanic market that mainstream agencies ignored. With my mother Isabella's sharp business sense and community connections, they built Rodriguez Media Group into a powerhouse handling campaigns for major corporations wanting to reach diverse audiences. Growing up, our dinner table was essentially a second conference room. My father would spread campaign mock-ups across the mahogany surface, while my mother analyzed market research data. My older brother Carlos, now 34, absorbed every strategy session, groomed from childhood to inherit the family legacy. My younger brother Diego, 26, though more interested in the creative side, was still given a fast-track position as creative director straight out of art school. I was different. While I shared the Rodriguez instinct for marketing, I saw beyond traditional advertising. During college, I became fascinated with how social media and digital platforms were revolutionizing how brands connected with consumers. My vision was clear. Create an agency that specialized in authentic digital storytelling, influencer partnerships, and viral content strategies. Social media is just a trend, my father declared when I pitched my ideas during my senior year at Northwestern. Real advertising requires real relationships with real clients, not teenagers with cameras. Despite graduating summa cum laude with degrees in marketing and digital communications, my family treated my ambitions like a phase I'd outgrow. Carlos called my ideas millennial nonsense, while my mother gently suggested I focus on learning the traditional aspects of the business first. Only my grandmother Rosa, who had stepped back from active involvement, showed genuine interest. During our weekly coffee dates at her favorite cafe, she would ask thoughtful questions about my digital strategies. "The world is changing, Mija," she told me once, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Your father built something amazing, but he's always been afraid of change. That's his strength and his weakness." With my family unwilling to invest in my vision, I took the unconventional path. I declined the comfortable account executive position at Rodriguez Media and instead worked nights at a restaurant while building my digital agency during the day. I rented a tiny studio apartment, converted the living room into an office, and launched Authentic Digital with my savings and a small business loan. The first year was brutal. I survived on ramen and coffee, worked 16-hour days, and faced constant rejection from clients who questioned whether a young Latina could deliver results in the digital space. Meanwhile, at every family gathering, I endured subtle digs about my little blog project and questions about when I would join the real business. The breakthrough came when I developed a TikTok campaign for a struggling restaurant chain that went viral, increasing their sales by 300% in 6 weeks. Suddenly, small businesses were calling me. My authentic approach to digital marketing, focusing on real stories rather than polished advertisements, began gaining traction with younger consumers who were tired of traditional advertising. Still, my family remained unimpressed. At last year's family meeting, I proudly shared that Authentic Digital had generated $8 million in revenue for our clients. "That's nice, sweetheart," my mother said with a patronizing smile. Carlos just secured the Martinez Hotels account, $25 million annually. What they didn't acknowledge was that Carlos had a team of 40 people and the full resources of a decades-old company behind him. I had built my success with a team of 8 passionate employees, led by my assistant Sarah Kim, who had joined me when my company was nothing but a laptop and a dream. Sarah was a marketing graduate from DePaul who turned down offers from established agencies to take a chance on my vision. "I'd rather build something revolutionary than maintain something traditional," she told me during her interview. She became not just my assistant, but my strategic partner and closest friend. Despite my company's growing success, reaching $15 million in client revenue by our third year, the pattern continued at family gatherings. My ideas were interrupted, my achievements minimized, and my business referred to as my social media thing, rather than the legitimate enterprise it had become. Last Christmas, my grandmother pulled me aside. "They're scared, Emma," she whispered, her eyes twinkling with something between mischief and pride. "Scared of what?" I asked. "That you might surpass them all," she replied. "Innovation always threatens the establishment." With those words echoing in my mind, I arrived at this year's quarterly meeting determined to be taken seriously. My company had just signed 3 major clients: a national restaurant chain, a fashion retailer, and a tech startup that wanted to reach Gen Z consumers. Our quarterly revenue had doubled in 6 months, and we were expanding to Los Angeles. Yet somehow, I found myself directed to the staff break room instead of the boardroom. The morning of the Rodriguez Media Group quarterly meeting dawned crisp and clear. I dressed carefully in a tailored black blazer, selected jewelry that projected confidence, and rehearsed my presentation one final time before driving to our family's headquarters in downtown Chicago. The building always impressed visitors: 30 floors of glass and steel with the Rodriguez Media Group logo prominently displayed on the top floor. Growing up, I'd been proud to tell people my family owned this tower. Today, as I parked my BMW beside a row of luxury vehicles in the executive garage, I felt ready to claim my place in that legacy. I rode the elevator to the 30th floor, carrying my portfolio and laptop bag. The executive floor featured polished marble floors, original artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. I'd spent countless afternoons here as a child, but today felt different. I was here as a peer, not a daughter. My mother met me at reception, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing the kind of designer suit that commanded respect in any room. "Emma, darling," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "We weren't sure you'd make it with your busy schedule." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. "I have some exciting updates to share about our recent client acquisitions." She adjusted her pearl earrings, a nervous habit I'd noticed since childhood. "Of course, sweetheart. The board is gathering in the main conference room, but why don't you wait in the break room? I'll call you when we're ready for your segment." I blinked, momentarily confused. "My segment? Mom, I'm here for the quarterly meeting." "Yes, dear, but the agenda is quite packed with the Martinez Hotel's expansion and Carlos's new automotive campaign. We've scheduled 15 minutes at the end for family updates." She gestured toward the break room. "There's fresh coffee and those pastries you like." The dismissal was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that for a moment I couldn't respond. Through the glass walls of the main conference room, I could see the polished mahogany table where 20 executives were already settling in, reviewing quarterly reports and strategic plans. "I have a presentation about our digital integration services," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I think the board would be interested in how we could help Rodriguez Media reach younger demographics." My mother patted my arm. "That sounds fascinating, Emma. Perhaps you can email everyone a summary later." "Thomas just arrived. I should greet him." She moved swiftly toward the silver-haired chairman of the board, leaving me standing in the reception area. I watched as board members and senior executives filed past me into the conference room. Some nodded politely. Others seemed not to notice me at all. Carlos strode by with 2 VPs, deep in conversation about market share analysis. "Carlos," I called, stepping forward. He glanced over, not breaking stride. "Hey sis, grab me a coffee if you're headed to the break room, would you? Light cream, no sugar." Before I could respond, they disappeared into the conference room, and the glass doors closed behind them. I stood frozen in the reception area, torn between making a scene and swallowing my pride. Creating a confrontation would only reinforce their perception of me as emotional and unprofessional. Yet accepting this treatment felt like betraying everything I'd worked for. Maria, our longtime receptionist who had known me since I was 12, appeared beside me. Her sympathetic expression told me she understood exactly what was happening. "I set up the break room nicely, Miss Emma," she said quietly. "There's a good spot by the window where you can work." I thanked her, fighting back tears of frustration as I walked to the break room. The same room where I'd done homework while listening to my father coach Carlos on client presentations. The same room where my business ideas had been relegated to casual conversation rather than strategic discussion. The break room was comfortable enough. Modern furniture, a view of the Chicago River, and a coffee station that rivaled most cafes. But today it represented my continued exclusion from the business discussions that shaped my family's legacy. I set up my laptop at a small table by the window, spreading my presentation materials beside it. If they wouldn't invite me to the main table, I would use this time productively. Through the closed doors, I could hear the meeting beginning, my father's authoritative voice calling everyone to order, the respectful silence that followed. I was reviewing my client acquisition reports when my phone began vibrating insistently. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and her usually composed voice came through unusually excited. "Emma, I know you're at the family meeting, but this couldn't wait," Sarah said, words tumbling out rapidly. As my assistant for 3 years, she typically maintained professional composure regardless of circumstances. "What's happening?" I asked, lowering my voice and glancing toward the conference room where the meeting continued without me. "Sterling Digital is selling," she said, the words hitting me like a lightning bolt. "The entire company, everything." I nearly dropped my phone. Sterling Digital was our biggest competitor in the digital marketing space, a company twice our size with an established presence in markets we'd been trying to penetrate for 2 years. "That's impossible," I replied. "Rachel Sterling has been saying she'll never sell since she started the company." "Burnout and family pressure," Sarah said soberly. "She's been dealing with anxiety attacks, and her investors want out. She wants to sell quickly to someone who'll maintain the company culture and keep her team employed." I moved to the window, processing this information. Sterling Digital had pioneered interactive social media campaigns and had an impressive roster of entertainment industry clients. Their creative team was legendary, and their client list included celebrities and major brands that had been resistant to working with smaller agencies. "How did you find out before it hit the market?" I asked. "Remember Jessica from my graduate program? She's Sterling's operations manager now. She called me directly because she knows we might be interested." "But Emma," Sarah's voice became urgent, "this is extremely time-sensitive. Rachel is giving serious buyers just 72 hours to submit offers before going public. She wants to avoid a drawn-out bidding war." My mind raced through implications and possibilities. Sterling Digital had developed cutting-edge AR advertising experiences and had successfully cracked the entertainment industry, 2 areas where we'd struggled to gain entry. Most importantly, acquiring Sterling would instantly make Authentic Digital larger than Rodriguez Media Group. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I sat in a break room being excluded from my family's business discussions, I was being offered the opportunity to surpass them entirely. "Send me their financial summary," I said, returning to my laptop. "Already in your inbox," Sarah replied efficiently. "I've also contacted our legal team to prepare for due diligence if you want to pursue this." I opened the documents, scanning quickly through revenue figures, client contracts, and market analysis reports. Despite my location in a break room rather than a proper office, my focus narrowed to the opportunity before me. The numbers were compelling. Sterling's creative capabilities complemented our strategic strengths. Their entertainment industry connections filled a major gap in our portfolio, and their team had expertise in areas where we were still developing competency. "What's the asking price?" I asked, though I could see it clearly in the documents. $12 million, Sarah confirmed. But Jessica hinted that Rachel might accept 10 if the buyer commits to keeping the entire team and maintaining their creative autonomy. I did rapid mental calculations. My company had recently closed a funding round that gave us access to $6 million in expansion capital. We had cash reserves of $2 million. We would need additional financing, but with Sterling's client base and revenue stream, securing it was definitely feasible. "Sarah, I need you to move fast," I said, my decision crystallizing. "Contact Miller and Associates about bridge financing options. Have our legal team begin drafting preliminary acquisition documents. Schedule an emergency leadership meeting for 3 p.m. today. What about your family? Sarah asked carefully. Would Rodriguez Media want to partner on this? It would reduce your financing needs significantly. The question gave me pause. From the conference room, I could hear my father's voice explaining why traditional advertising would always outperform gimmicky digital campaigns. The same digital campaigns that had revolutionized the industry and that Sterling had leveraged brilliantly. Let's develop our strategy first, I decided. I'll discuss it with them today, but I want our approach clear before involving anyone else. Got it, Sarah replied. I'll have everything ready by 3. And Emma? This could be transformative for us. After hanging up, I stared at Sterling's financial projections on my screen. This acquisition wouldn't just grow my company, it would legitimize everything I'd been working toward. It would prove that my vision of authentic digital marketing wasn't just viable, but represented the future of the advertising industry. I closed the financial documents and opened a blank presentation to outline our acquisition strategy. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the magnitude of the opportunity before me. From the conference room, I heard laughter following one of Carlos's comments. The sound crystallized my resolve. It was time to enter that meeting, not as the daughter relegated to the break room, but as the CEO pursuing an industry-changing acquisition. I gathered my materials, straightened my blazer, and walked purposefully toward the conference room. Whether they were ready or not, the Rodriguez family business discussion was about to change dramatically. I paused at the conference room entrance, taking in the scene. 20 people sat around the mahogany table my grandfather had commissioned when the company first went international. My father occupied the head chair with Carlos to his right and Diego to his left. Board members and senior executives filled the remaining seats, tablets and notebooks open before them. My father was mid-sentence when he noticed me standing in the doorway. Emma, he said, his tone suggesting both surprise and mild irritation. Did you need something? All heads turned toward me. I recognized the polite expressions of interest that didn't reach their eyes. The same people who had watched me grow up, who had celebrated my college graduation, and who now viewed me as an interruption rather than a colleague. I'd like to join the meeting, I said simply, maintaining eye contact with my father. An uncomfortable silence followed. My mother, seated near the middle of the table, gave me a tight smile. Darling, we're in the middle of discussing the Martinez Hotel's expansion. Perhaps after we finish the main agenda. I understand, I interrupted, something I rarely did with my mother. But I have time-sensitive information that could impact our discussion. My father cleared his throat. Emma, we're following a specific agenda here. If you'd submitted your items beforehand. I did, I said, pulling up the email on my phone. 6 weeks ago. I received no response. Another awkward silence descended. Thomas Wellington, the board chairman and my father's longtime friend, attempted diplomacy. Perhaps we could take a brief recess? Allow Emma to join us properly? My father looked like he wanted to object, but nodded stiffly. As board members stepped out for coffee refills, my father approached me. This is inappropriate, Emma, he said in a low voice. These are serious business discussions, not a forum for promoting your social media experiments. The dismissive characterization of my multi-million-dollar company as social media experiments ignited something inside me. My social media experiments generated over $15 million in client revenue last year, I replied evenly. And I'm here because I have insights that could benefit Rodriguez Media if you'd listen. Carlos joined us, coffee in hand. Look, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but there's a reason we have organizational structures. You can't just walk in and expect to understand the complexities of what we're discussing. His condescending tone was familiar, the same one he'd used when explaining why I couldn't play business with the boys in our father's home office when we were children. But we weren't children anymore, and I wasn't asking permission to play. I understand more than you think, I replied. For instance, I understand that the Martinez campaign is struggling because your digital presence is practically non-existent and your social media engagement is below industry standards. Carlos's expression hardened. That's not your concern. Your conversion rate from digital touchpoints to actual bookings is 40% below industry benchmarks, I continued. I know because 3 Martinez executives reached out to us after being disappointed by your digital strategy. Board members were filtering back in, some catching snippets of our conversation. My mother approached, placing a gentle hand on my arm. Emma, dear, you know we value your perspective, she said softly. But perhaps this isn't the appropriate venue. You have your own successful company now. Shouldn't you be focusing on that instead of our business matters? The suggestion that I should stay in my lane, something never directed at my brothers, was the match to gasoline. My lane, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, includes running a company that's about to acquire Sterling Digital. The room fell completely silent. My father, who had been reviewing papers at the table, looked up sharply. What did you say? I took a deep breath. Sterling Digital is for sale. Rachel Sterling is selling due to burnout, and serious buyers have 72 hours to submit offers. I just received word, and I'm preparing a bid. For the first time that day, I had everyone's complete attention. Carlos's expression shifted from condescension to shock. My father's brow furrowed in disbelief. That's impossible, my father said. Rachel would have reached out to established agencies first. We've been competitors for years. Traditional competitors, I clarified. My company represents the direction she's taken in recent years. Her team contacted us directly. Thomas Wellington leaned forward. Emma, if this information is accurate, it represents a significant market shift. Sterling Digital is a major player. I'm aware, I replied. That's why I thought the family might want to discuss a collaborative approach. Rodriguez Media could partner with Authentic Digital on the acquisition. We'd gain Sterling's creative capabilities and entertainment industry connections. You'd expand into digital marketing leadership. I pulled up Sterling's financial summary on my phone and connected it to the conference room's projection system. These are preliminary numbers. The asking price is $12 million, though there's flexibility for the right buyer. As board members murmured among themselves, examining the projected figures, I felt a momentary surge of hope. Perhaps this was the bridge that would finally connect my world with my family's business. My father studied the screen intently, then turned to me with an expression I knew too well, the one that preceded dismissal of ideas he considered impractical. This would be reckless, he declared. Sterling has overextended into unproven markets and invested too heavily in experimental campaigns. This is exactly the kind of impulsive decision that tech companies make before they collapse. Impulsive, I echoed. I've been analyzing Sterling's business model for 2 years. Their experimental campaigns have increased client ROI by an average of 35% and reduced customer acquisition costs by 28%. Carlos shook his head. Even if those numbers are accurate, the risk is unjustifiable. We'd be foolish to dilute our resources on this acquisition. One by one, board members began nodding in agreement with my father and brother. The familiar pattern was reasserting itself, my insights dismissed, my research ignored, my business judgment questioned. My father turned to Thomas. Let's return to the agenda. The Martinez expansion requires immediate attention. Just like that, the door closed. Not just on the Sterling opportunity, but on any pretense that my opinion held value in this room. So that's it, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. You won't even consider the largest acquisition opportunity this company has ever encountered? My father sighed heavily. Emma, either join the family business properly, learn from the ground up as your brothers did, or accept that these decisions aren't yours to make. You can't have it both ways. The ultimatum hung in the air. Join properly, meaning surrender my company, my vision, my independence, or remain excluded forever. I gathered my materials with deliberate calm. Thank you for clarifying where we stand. I won't interrupt your meeting further. As I turned to leave, Diego spoke for the first time. Emma, wait. But I was already walking out, my mind shifting from disappointment to determination. If my family wouldn't see the value in collaboration, I would pursue Sterling Digital independently. And when I succeeded, they would no longer have the luxury of excluding me from any table. The drive from Rodriguez Media's headquarters to my office took 18 minutes, just enough time for my disappointment to transform into laser focus. I parked in my reserved spot behind the converted warehouse that housed Authentic Digital, took a deep breath, and walked into the buzzing energy of my company. Unlike my family's traditional oak-paneled offices, our space featured exposed brick walls, abundant natural light, and an open floor plan designed to encourage creativity and collaboration. Digital marketers, content creators, and data analysts worked at clustered workstations, the hum of productive innovation filling the air. Sarah met me at the entrance, tablet in hand, and that focused expression that meant she'd been busy. Conference room is ready. The team will gather at 3 as requested, but I've asked Jennifer from legal and Marcus from finance to join us now for preliminary discussions. I nodded appreciatively. This was why Sarah had become indispensable. She anticipated needs before I articulated them. Any updates from Sterling's side? Just confirmation that they're reviewing expressions of interest until tomorrow at 5 p.m. After that, they'll select 3 finalists for full due diligence. She paused as we walked through the office. Also, I reached out to Miller and Associates about bridge financing. They're very interested. In our glass-walled conference room, Jennifer Lee, our legal counsel, and Marcus Torres, our CFO, were already reviewing documents. Both had joined me in the early days, taking equity stakes when cash was tight. Their loyalty had been rewarded as the company grew, but their commitment went far beyond financial incentives. I take it the family meeting didn't go well, Jennifer observed as I set down my portfolio with more force than necessary. Let's focus on Sterling, I replied, not wanting to dwell on family dynamics. What are we looking at financially, Marcus? Marcus adjusted his glasses, bringing up spreadsheets on the wall display. Based on preliminary information, Sterling's asking price is roughly 3 times their annual EBITDA, reasonable for their market position and growth trajectory. The challenge, he continued, is that even with our recent funding, we'd need to secure an additional $4 to $5 million in financing. Jennifer tapped her pen against her notepad. The acquisition itself isn't legally complex. Their corporate structure is clean, and preliminary background checks show no major litigation risks. The financing structure will be the main hurdle. I studied the financial projections Marcus had prepared. The combined entity would have annual revenue approaching $25 million, larger than Rodriguez Media's core digital offerings. The thought brought a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal vindication that I tried to set aside to focus objectively. What about Miller and Associates? I asked Sarah. Any initial feedback? David Miller is reviewing the opportunity personally and wants to discuss terms tomorrow morning. He's cautiously optimistic, but needs a detailed integration plan before committing to financing discussions. For the next 2 hours, we dissected Sterling's business from every angle: their creative processes, client portfolio, company culture, and technological infrastructure. Marcus identified potential cost synergies, while Jennifer flagged regulatory considerations in markets where we'd be expanding. By the time our full leadership team gathered at 3 p.m., we had developed a comprehensive acquisition strategy. Our CTO, Alex Chun, provided technical assessment of Sterling's platforms. Our creative director, Maria Santos, outlined brand integration approaches. Our operations manager, Kevin Brown, detailed logistical considerations for merging teams across different cities. Bottom line, Marcus concluded, this acquisition accelerates our 5-year growth plan by at least 2 years. We'd instantly become the leading mid-market digital agency in the Midwest. The room fell quiet as everyone turned to me for direction. These people had believed in my vision when few others did. They had worked late nights and weekends, accepted deferred compensation during lean periods, and celebrated each milestone as a collective achievement. Thoughts? I asked, wanting their honest assessment before revealing my inclination. Kevin spoke first. It's aggressive, but it aligns perfectly with our expansion strategy. We were already planning to move into entertainment marketing next year. This gives us instant credibility rather than building from scratch. Maria nodded. From a creative standpoint, Sterling's team is legendary. Their AR campaigns for Netflix and Disney are exactly the kind of work we want to be doing. Combined with our data-driven approach, we'd be unstoppable. Alex's assessment was more measured. Integration would be complex but manageable. Their tech stack is different from ours, but complementary. We could have unified systems operational within 6 months. One by one, team members provided their analysis, all recognizing both the opportunity and the risk. Unlike the dismissive response from my family, these professionals evaluated the acquisition on its merits. After everyone had spoken, I thanked them for their input. Please continue developing your integration plans. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning to finalize our approach. As the team dispersed, I remained in the conference room, staring at projection screens filled with market analyses, financial models, and integration timelines. The rational case for acquisition was compelling, but the emotional weight felt suddenly overwhelming. When everyone had gone except Sarah, I finally voiced the doubt I'd been suppressing. Are we overreaching? My family certainly thinks so. Sarah considered her response carefully. Your family built an impressive business through traditional methods, but they've consistently underestimated how rapidly the industry is changing. That's their limitation, not yours. She gathered her notes. I'll let you process this. Just remember why you started this company in the first place. Alone in the conference room, I watched the Chicago skyline as afternoon faded to evening. The doubts I had pushed aside during the day crept in. Was I pursuing Sterling partly to prove something to my family? Was my judgment clouded by the humiliation of being relegated to a break room? My phone rang, displaying a number I recognized immediately, my grandmother Rosa. Mija. Her warm voice came through the line. I heard you caused quite a stir at today's meeting. That's one way to put it, I replied, smiling despite myself. Your father called me, very worked up about Sterling Digital and your reckless interest in acquiring them. She chuckled softly. Do you agree with him? Absolutely not, I said without hesitation. This is exactly the kind of opportunity that could transform our industry presence. Good, she said firmly. Emma, I've watched you build something remarkable by seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't see. Your approach to marketing isn't just different, it's necessary for the industry's future. Her words loosened something tight in my chest. The acquisition would stretch us financially, I admitted. Every meaningful growth requires risk, she replied. When your grandfather and I invested our life savings to help your father expand beyond the Hispanic market, everyone said we were overreaching. Now it's the foundation of everything. We talked for nearly an hour, not just about Sterling, but about vision, courage, and the future of advertising. By the time we hung up, my resolve had solidified. I texted Sarah. Schedule investor meeting for tomorrow, 9 a.m. We're moving forward. Her reply came immediately. Already drafting the presentation. I spent the next several hours refining our acquisition proposal, focusing on concrete benefits rather than emotional appeals. When I finally left the office at 11 p.m., my mind is clear. Whether my family approved or not, I would pursue this opportunity based on its merits and my conviction in our company's direction. Tomorrow would bring either the most significant milestone in Authentic Digital's journey or a lesson in overextension. Either way, I would face it on my terms, not from a break room, but from the head of my own table. The following morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., giving myself time to review presentation materials and center my thoughts before the investor meeting. Our conference room had been prepared meticulously, financial projections displayed on screens, acquisition folders at each seat, coffee and breakfast arranged on the credenza. At 8:45, Sarah entered with final updates. Miller and Associates confirmed. David Miller is attending with their senior partner Lisa Chong. Venture Growth Partners is sending 2 representatives. We also have interest from 3 private equity firms. I nodded, making final adjustments to my presentation. And Sterling's team? No direct contact yet, but Jessica confirmed they've received several preliminary inquiries. They're planning to make finalist decisions by tomorrow. At exactly 9 a.m., our potential investors began arriving. David Miller, whose firm had been watching our growth for months, greeted me warmly. Lisa Chong was more reserved, her analytical gaze taking in our office environment as an indicator of company culture. Representatives from Venture Growth Partners, Morrison Capital, and two smaller investment firms completed the group, all serious financial players with the capacity to support an acquisition of Sterling's magnitude. As everyone settled, I chose to begin not with slides or financials, but with a simple question. What's the most memorable advertisement you've seen in the past year? The responses were telling: a Super Bowl commercial, a viral TikTok campaign, an interactive Instagram story. Not one person mentioned traditional print or radio advertising. That shift in memorable advertising reflects a fundamental change in how consumers discover, evaluate, and choose brands. I continued. Sterling Digital recognized this evolution early and built their entire business model around authentic digital storytelling. Moving to the presentation screen, I displayed side-by-side metrics showing Sterling's performance versus traditional agencies. Their client retention rates, campaign engagement levels, and return on advertising spend consistently outperformed industry standards. For the next 45 minutes, I detailed the strategic rationale, market opportunities, creative synergies, and financial projections of the acquisition. I addressed potential integration challenges honestly, presenting mitigation strategies rather than downplaying risks. When I concluded, the room remained quiet for several moments. David Miller broke the silence. Compelling vision, Emma. But the financing gap is significant. How do you propose structuring this without crippling equity dilution? This was the critical question I had anticipated and prepared for extensively. I outlined a hybrid approach: convertible debt with favorable terms, earn-out provisions tied to integration milestones, and performance-based financing tranches that would release capital as we achieved specific growth targets. Lisa Chong leaned forward. You're proposing to acquire a company twice your size in terms of headcount. What gives you confidence you can manage the cultural integration successfully? Twice our size in employees, but our revenue per employee is actually higher, I acknowledged. More importantly, both companies share similar values around creativity, authenticity, and client results. We're not trying to absorb them overnight. This is a careful 12-month integration process. The questions continued for over an hour, challenging, specific, occasionally skeptical, but always focused on business fundamentals rather than personality or perception. Unlike my family's dismissal, these financial professionals were evaluating the acquisition purely on its merits. As the session concluded, David Miller remained while others departed for internal discussions. This isn't a guaranteed yes, he cautioned, but it's a strong case. We'll have an answer by end of day. Throughout the afternoon, Sarah provided updates as investors responded. Morrison Capital declined, citing concentration risk in the advertising sector. Venture Growth Partners requested additional market analysis, but expressed strong preliminary interest. At 4:23 p.m., the email I'd been waiting for arrived from Miller and Associates. David and his team were prepared to lead the financing round, contingent on participation from at least one other institutional investor to share risk. By 5:15 p.m., Venture Growth Partners had confirmed their participation, and one of the private equity firms indicated interest in a smaller stake. We have the financing, I told my leadership team, who had gathered anxiously in the conference room. Now we need to convince Sterling to choose us. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity. Our legal team drafted formal acquisition documents while finance structured the deal terms. Creative teams developed integration roadmaps and cultural alignment strategies. By Thursday morning, we had assembled a comprehensive offer for Sterling Digital that addressed not just the financial terms, but our vision for combining the company's strengths while preserving Sterling's creative autonomy. Rachel Sterling had built a reputation for valuing company culture as much as financial returns. Rather than submitting our offer electronically, I decided to present it in person at Sterling's offices in downtown Chicago. You should be there for this, I told Sarah as we prepared to leave. You've been essential to making it happen. Sterling's offices occupied 3 floors of a converted Art Deco building, with exposed brick walls showcasing their most creative campaigns. Unlike the polished corporate environments that characterized most advertising agencies, Sterling had cultivated an atmosphere that felt more like a design studio. Rachel Sterling received us in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Grant Park. At 44, she commanded respect through quiet intensity rather than loud proclamation. Her reputation for innovative campaigns was matched by her commitment to employee development and creative freedom. "Rodriguez," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've been following Authentic Digital's growth. Impressive trajectory." "Thank you," I replied. "Your work on the Netflix AR campaign inspired our approach to experiential marketing." She gestured for us to sit. "Let's dispense with extended pleasantries. I have less time than I'd like for this decision, and I want to be direct. You've submitted one of 4 serious offers. My team has reviewed the financials, and they're competitive." My heart sank slightly at learning we faced more competition than anticipated. "However," she continued, 3 of the offers came from traditional agencies looking to acquire our creative capabilities without understanding our culture. Yours is different." She slid a document across the table, our offer with handwritten notes in the margins. "Your integration plan shows genuine understanding of what we've built here. More importantly, your commitment to maintaining our creative autonomy while providing strategic infrastructure support aligns with my vision for Sterling's future." I reviewed the document carefully. She had adjusted some earnout structures and added provisions for employee retention bonuses, but the core terms remained acceptable. "These modifications work for us," I confirmed. "We believe Sterling's creative culture is what makes the company valuable. We want to enhance it, not change it." Rachel studied me for a moment. "Your family has an established reputation in traditional advertising. Miguel Rodriguez is well respected, though somewhat resistant to digital transformation. Why aren't they part of this acquisition?" The question was direct and deserved an honest answer. "We have different philosophies about the industry's future," I replied diplomatically. A knowing smile crossed her face. "Different philosophies, a polite way of saying they don't fully appreciate what you've built." Before I could respond, she continued, "I chose your offer not just for the financial terms, but because you understand where advertising is heading. The Rodriguez name will now be associated with both traditional excellence and digital innovation. That's a powerful legacy." 2 hours later, we signed the preliminary agreement. By the time Sarah and I boarded our return flight to our office, news of the acquisition had begun circulating in industry circles. My phone filled with congratulatory messages from team members, investors, and business contacts. Notably absent were messages from my family. The following morning, Advertising Age published an article about the acquisition, describing it as a significant shift in Chicago's advertising landscape, and noting that Rodriguez's digital-first agency has outmaneuvered established players, including her family's traditional firm. As media coverage expanded throughout the day, my team celebrated the milestone that would transform our company's trajectory. While I appreciated their excitement, I maintained focus on the immense work ahead: integration planning, client communication strategies, and organizational restructuring. It wasn't until evening that my phone displayed an unexpected caller, my father. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. His voice carried an unfamiliar tone, something between respect and reconciliation. "Congratulations on the Sterling acquisition," he said formally. "It's impressive." "Thank you," I replied, unsure what else to add. After an awkward pause, he continued, "Perhaps we should discuss how this might create synergies between our companies." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same opportunity he had dismissed 2 days earlier now warranted discussion after public validation. But rather than pointing this out, I simply said, "I'd be open to that conversation." "Good," he said. "Next week, perhaps, after your initial integration work is underway." As I hung up, I felt no vindictive satisfaction, no desire to gloat over changing perceptions. The acquisition wasn't about proving my family wrong. It was about building something meaningful that aligned with my vision for the industry's future. 3 days after signing with Rachel Sterling, I stood before our combined companies at an all-hands meeting in our expanded Chicago headquarters, live-streamed to Sterling's team. "Today marks not an ending, but a beginning," I told the unified teams. "Together, we're creating the most innovative, client-focused digital marketing agency in the Midwest." The path forward involves challenges alongside opportunities, but I'm confident in what we'll build together. As applause filled the room, I realized that the real measure of success wasn't the acquisition itself, but what we would create from it. And that journey was just beginning. 2 months after the Sterling acquisition, I stood at the window of our new executive suite, looking out over Chicago's downtown core. We had relocated to a prestigious building in the Loop, not for appearances, but because we needed space to accommodate our expanded team of 60 employees. The Sterling integration was proceeding ahead of schedule. Our combined creative capabilities had already landed us 3 major accounts that neither company could have secured independently. Revenue was up 40% from the previous quarter, and industry publications were calling us the agency to watch. Behind me, Sarah cleared her throat. "Your grandmother is here to see you." I turned in surprise. Rosa rarely ventured downtown these days, preferring family to visit her in her Lincoln Park apartment. "Send her in, please." My grandmother entered slowly, using her walking stick but still carrying herself with the dignity that had made her a force in Chicago's Hispanic business community decades ago. At 84, her body had slowed, but her eyes remained sharp with intelligence and warmth. She whistled appreciatively as she looked around the office. "Quite a change from that warehouse where you started," she observed, settling carefully into a chair. "What brings you downtown, Abuela?" I asked, sitting across from her. She smiled. Can't an old woman visit her granddaughter without interrogation? Especially when she's just pulled off the most impressive acquisition in Chicago advertising this year. I laughed. "Of course. Would you like coffee?" "Yeah." "No, Mija. I can't stay long. Your abuelo has me on a strict schedule these days. Doctor appointments, physical therapy, all the indignities of aging." She leaned forward, her expression growing more serious. "I wanted to congratulate you properly. What you've accomplished, building your company, securing the Sterling acquisition, managing the integration, it's remarkable." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "Your support has meant everything."
Rosa nodded.
"I've lived long enough to recognize vision when I see it. Your father has many strengths, but embracing change isn't among them." She chuckled. "He's coming around, though." The Sterling acquisition gave him quite a wake-up call. As if summoned by her words, my phone buzzed with my father's name on the display. "Speaking of," I said, showing her the screen. "Take it," Rosa encouraged. "I'll see myself out. But Emma, Sunday dinner this weekend. The whole family. It's time." I nodded, accepting the call as my grandmother made her way to the door, giving me a thumbs up before closing it behind her. "Emma," my father's voice came through, more hesitant than his usual authoritative tone. "Do you have a moment?" "I do," I replied, watching my grandmother's retreating figure through the glass wall. "I've been reflecting on recent events," he continued. "Your acquisition of Sterling was strategically sound. The market has responded very positively." Coming from him, this was extraordinary praise. "Thank you," I said simply. "The board is meeting next Tuesday to discuss our digital transformation strategy," he continued. "Given your expertise in this area, we would value your perspective." I recognized what this invitation had cost him. My father wasn't apologizing exactly, but this was his way of acknowledging he had underestimated me. "I appreciate the invitation," I replied carefully. "I'd be happy to attend, though I want to be clear about my role. I'm coming as the CEO of Authentic Digital, not as a family member seeking approval." A pause followed. "Understood," he finally said. "The meeting begins at 10 a.m. I'll have Maria send you the agenda." After we hung up, I sat in my office, processing the significance of this conversation. It wasn't the full acknowledgement I might have once craved, but it represented a shift in our professional relationship, one based on earned respect rather than familial obligation. The following Tuesday, I arrived at Rodriguez Media Group's headquarters 15 minutes before the board meeting. The building looked the same, but I felt different walking through the lobby, not as the excluded daughter, but as a peer who had proven herself in the marketplace. The receptionist did a double take when I announced myself. "Miss Rodriguez, it's wonderful to see you. You're here for the board meeting, I assume?" That's right. I confirmed. I'm presenting on digital integration strategies. Her surprise was evident, but she recovered quickly. Of course. Let me escort you to the conference room. As we walked through the familiar corridors, I noticed subtle changes, more digital displays, updated technology infrastructure, even a small social media monitoring station. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The conference room fell quiet as I entered. The same mahogany table, the same leather chairs, many of the same faces, but the dynamic had shifted unmistakably. My father rose from his seat at the head of the table. Emma, thank you for joining us. He gestured to an empty chair, not at the far end where visitors typically sat, but in the middle of the table, positioned as an equal participant. As I took my seat, I noticed Carlos's expression, a mixture of grudging respect and sibling competitiveness. Diego, beside him, gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Before we begin the formal agenda, my father announced, I want to acknowledge Emma's recent achievements. The Sterling acquisition has positioned Authentic Digital as a leader in the digital marketing space, bringing additional recognition to the Rodriguez name in advertising circles. The acknowledgement was professional rather than personal, focused on business impact rather than family pride, but it represented significant progress nonetheless. Throughout the meeting, I contributed insights on digital transformation, consumer behavior trends, and technology integration strategies. The same perspectives that had been dismissed at previous family gatherings were now met with note-taking, thoughtful questions, and genuine engagement. When discussion turned to the Martinez Hotel's account, the same project that had dominated the agenda during my break room exile, I offered specific recommendations for improving their digital marketing approach. Rather than automatic dismissal, these suggestions were noted for immediate implementation. After the meeting concluded, my mother approached me. You were very impressive today, she said, and for the first time, it sounded like genuine surprise rather than patronizing encouragement. Thank you, I replied. These are strategies I've been developing for years. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Yes, well, sometimes it takes external validation to recognize value that's been there all along. She paused. Will you join us for lunch? Your father has reserved the private room at Gibson's. I considered the invitation. Part of me wanted to decline, to maintain professional boundaries rather than slip back into family dynamics. But another part recognized the opportunity to establish a new type of relationship. I can stay for an hour, I agreed. I have a client presentation at 2:30. The lunch was not without awkward moments. Old patterns emerged occasionally. Carlos interrupting my points, my father making unilateral pronouncements, my mother attempting to smooth over disagreements. But there were also new dynamics, my father asking my opinion on industry trends, board members referencing my insights from the meeting, even Carlos grudgingly inquiring about Sterling's creative processes. As we finished dessert, my father cleared his throat. We've been discussing potential collaboration opportunities between Rodriguez Media and Authentic Digital. Nothing formal yet, but there may be synergies worth exploring. The irony was palpable. This was precisely what I had suggested before being relegated to the break room 3 months earlier. Rather than pointing this out, I nodded professionally. I'm open to discussing possibilities that benefit both companies, I replied. My team can prepare some preliminary proposals for consideration. As I left the restaurant, Diego walked me to my car. Unlike Carlos, who had always been groomed as the heir apparent, Diego had struggled to find his distinct role in the family business. What you did with Sterling was incredible, he said when we were out of earshot of the others. I've been trying to get Dad to embrace social media marketing for 3 years. It's easier to dismiss ideas from within the established structure than from proven external success, I observed. He nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that. Would you have time for coffee next week? I have some ideas I'd like to run by you. This tentative bridge between our professional worlds represented perhaps the most meaningful shift of the day. I'd like that, I replied sincerely. Over the following months, the relationship between Authentic Digital and Rodriguez Media evolved gradually. We established limited partnership agreements, my company providing digital expertise for specific Rodriguez clients, their company offering traditional advertising experience for certain authentic digital accounts that needed integrated campaigns. The family dynamic shifted as well. Sunday dinners began including business discussions where my input was sought rather than tolerated. My father occasionally called for advice on digital marketing decisions. My mother stopped asking when I planned to get married and instead inquired about our expansion into the Los Angeles market. These changes weren't accompanied by dramatic apologies or tearful reconciliations. They emerged through consistent demonstration of competence, gradual earning of respect, and mutual recognition of complementary strengths. 6 months after the Sterling acquisition, I hosted my first quarterly board meeting as CEO of the combined company. Seated at the head of our new conference table in our expanded headquarters, I looked at the faces of executives from both Authentic Digital and Sterling, now unified under a shared vision. As the meeting commenced, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the break room of my family's office to the boardroom of a company I had built. From seeking family validation to finding self-worth through meaningful work and principled leadership. The acquisition of Sterling Digital had transformed our market position, making us one of the fastest-growing agencies in the Midwest. But the more significant transformation had been personal. The confidence that came from making difficult decisions, the clarity that emerged from staying true to my vision, and the freedom that resulted from building my own table rather than fighting for a seat at someone else's. As we reviewed quarterly results showing successful integration and accelerating growth, I recognized that the most valuable acquisition hadn't been Sterling Digital, but the understanding that external validation, even from family, was less important than internal conviction and purposeful action. When the board meeting concluded, I returned to my office where a simple frame hung on the wall. Inside was a photo from our first all-hands meeting after the Sterling acquisition, 60 employees united behind a common purpose. Below it, a quote I had written on my office whiteboard during those early days in the warehouse: "Build something so undeniable that tables expand to accommodate you." That evening, as I prepared to leave the office, Sarah knocked on my door. "Emma, there's someone here to see you." I looked up from my laptop to see my father standing in the doorway, looking somewhat uncomfortable in our modern office environment. "Dad, what brings you here?" He stepped into my office, glancing around at the exposed brick walls, the digital displays showing real-time campaign metrics, the creative awards we'd won since the Sterling integration. "I wanted to see what you've built here," he said quietly. "Really see it." For the next hour, I gave him a tour of our offices. I introduced him to team members, showed him our creative processes, explained our data analytics capabilities. He asked thoughtful questions, made appreciative comments about our company culture, and seemed genuinely impressed by the innovation happening in our converted warehouse-turned-headquarters. As we concluded the tour in my office, he sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. "I owe you an apology," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "I was wrong about digital marketing, wrong about your vision, and wrong to exclude you from business discussions. You've built something remarkable here." The apology I had once desperately wanted felt less important now than it might have years earlier. I had found my own validation through the work itself, through the clients we served, through the team we had built. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." "There's something else," he continued. "The board has been discussing succession planning for Rodriguez Media. Carlos is an excellent operator, but the industry is changing faster than he can adapt. We need someone who understands both traditional advertising and digital innovation." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. "Dad, if you're asking me to give up Authentic Digital to join Rodriguez Media—" "No," he interrupted quickly. "I'm asking if you'd consider a merger. Rodriguez Media and Authentic Digital, combining resources under unified leadership. You would be CEO of the combined entity." The offer stunned me into silence. After years of exclusion, he was offering me control of the family business, but only after I had proven I didn't need it. That's a significant proposition, I managed. It would require extensive planning, cultural integration, financial restructuring. "All achievable," he said. "If you're interested." I looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, processing the magnitude of what he was proposing. The combined companies would be a powerhouse in the Midwest advertising market, bridging traditional and digital capabilities in a way few agencies had managed successfully. "I'll need to discuss it with my team," I said finally. "This decision affects everyone who believed in this company when it was just an idea." He nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need." After he left, I sat alone in my office as the sun set over Lake Michigan. The offer represented everything I had once thought I wanted: recognition, family acceptance, control of a business legacy. But it also represented a choice between the independence I had fought for and the validation I had once craved. Sarah knocked and entered without waiting for permission, a privilege earned through years of partnership. "How are you processing all this?" she asked, settling into the chair my father had vacated. "Honestly, I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me is thrilled by the opportunity. Another part is terrified of losing what we've built here." "What does your gut tell you?" I considered the question carefully. That the right decision isn't about choosing between two companies, but about creating something neither could achieve alone. Sarah smiled. "That sounds like the Emma I know, never satisfied with either / or when both / and is possible." That night, I called my grandmother to discuss the offer. Her response was characteristically direct. "Mija, you've spent years proving you don't need their approval. Now you have to decide whether you want their partnership. But remember, you're negotiating from strength now, not desperation." Over the following weeks, I held extensive discussions with my team, my investors, and my family. The consensus that emerged was unanimous. A merger made strategic sense if structured properly to preserve what made both companies successful. 3 months later, I stood before the combined staff of Rodriguez Media and Authentic Digital at our newly integrated headquarters, a building that blended traditional elegance with modern innovation, much like the company we were creating. "Today, we're not just merging two companies," I announced to the assembled teams. "We're creating a new model for how advertising agencies can honor their heritage while embracing their future. We're proving that tradition and innovation aren't opposites. They're complementary forces that make each other stronger." As applause filled the room, I caught sight of my family in the audience. My father, looking proud in a way I hadn't seen since childhood. My mother, beaming with genuine happiness. Carlos and Diego, both committed to making the merged company successful despite the unconventional path that had brought us here. But most importantly, I saw Sarah, Alex, Marcus, Jennifer, and the dozens of other employees who had believed in a vision when it existed only in my imagination. They were the real measure of success, not because they had followed me, but because they had helped me build something worth leading. 6 months after the merger, I received a call from Rachel Sterling, who had stayed on as a creative consultant during our integration. "Emma," she said, "I wanted you to know that Incorporated magazine is featuring you in next month's cover story about women entrepreneurs transforming traditional industries." "That's unexpected," I replied. "The article focuses on how you built Authentic Digital, acquired Sterling, and then negotiated the merger with Rodriguez Media from a position of strength rather than desperation. They're calling it a case study in strategic patience and principled leadership." After we hung up, I realized that the most important lesson from this journey wasn't about business strategy or family dynamics. It was about the power of building something so authentic and valuable that recognition becomes inevitable, not because you demanded a seat at the table, but because you created a table worth joining. The break room where I had once been relegated now served as a casual meeting space in our renovated headquarters. Sometimes, when I passed by, I remembered that morning when Sarah's call had changed everything. But I no longer felt anger or humiliation about that exclusion. Instead, I felt gratitude for the motivation it had provided, for the clarity it had created, and for the journey it had begun. Because sometimes, the people who don't give you a seat at their table are inadvertently inspiring you to build something even better on your own terms. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Did you find a way to prove your worth? Or did you learn to validate yourself without their approval? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response to exclusion isn't anger, it's excellence. And sometimes the table you build yourself becomes the one everyone wants to join.